Okay,
Hey!
so we're filming. We are doing an edition about President's Day. Sorry it took so long. I had some allergy problems.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
We
So,
got a 5-day weekend.
right, we had a 5-day weekend. We're going to talk about President's Day. And we did have some, this is the History Explorers with Elaine and Stella and Nora, where we talk about
And guys,
actual,
she's
factual history. 5 years old, 8 years old.
And here was she.
Shh, calm down. So, we did have some time though to order this handy little prop.
I don't think.
That shows us who our presidents are. So, I've been looking at it with my girls,
Yep.
and
I
it
know
has
some.
all 54 presidents on here.
45.
That's a lot. 45.
45. Sorry.
Sorry.
Dyslexic. Nora actually just counted them all to make sure. So all 45 presidents here.
You could just look at them.
What do you guys notice about this?
I know. Can I say
Okay,
it?
shh. What do you notice, Stella?
They are old men.
They are
All of
all
them.
old men. What do you notice, Nora?
They're all presidents.
They're all presidents.
Yes.
They all seem like old men. Nora, do we see any, look at it with me, do we see any women on here?
Nope.
No. Did you look?
Yep.
A lot of beards.
Yep. A lot of beard.
Okay, what else do you notice? Is there anyone that's, what do
I
you
know.
notice about their skin?
I know.
Yes, Stella.
They are mostly. How should I say that? Skin color.
Skin color?
Yeah, they are mostly skin colored.
What does that mean?
Peach.
Peach colored?
They are all white people.
They are all white people except for, do you see one?
Obama.
Except for Barack Obama. He is black.
Why is he black?
He's a black guy.
Yeah.
One of his parents was black and one was white, right? Okay.
Cool.
So, he is the only black person. Everyone else is white. And,
Well, at least not those guys. They're gray.
well, it's because the pictures are black and white.
Okay.
And then everyone is also a man. What do you guys think about that? Do you see anyone on here that looks like you?
Let me look really hard. Then maybe.
Do you see anyone that kind of looks like you? I know there's no kids. Kids can't be president. We'll talk about that.
No.
But do you see anyone else who maybe like has smooth face? That's a girl.
Well, no.
No, long hair.
I don't have that long hair.
Yeah, but I mean your hair's
kind of
longer.
like yellow.
I see beards. Do you guys have beards?
No.
No.
But my friend Dad has beard.
Dad has a beard. There are some people in here that look like Dad.
My friend Zayla has a mustache though.
Shh. Okay. So, why do you think? Let me ask you, and I want you to think about it. Why do you think there's no women on here?
Because women.
Yes, Nora.
Because I think
Just as a refresher.
how do I say this?
How do you say what?
I don't know.
You don't know?
They can hear you now.
You can say I don't know.
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay, Stella, do you have any ideas? Why is there no women on here?
Because there's no presidents that worship them. Because, well,
It's okay. It's fine. Why is there no women? You can guess.
I think there's no women because, they don't think women can do the same things as men.
So maybe it's because people don't think women would be a good president, that they can't do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes, Nora.
And I think that the man don't let women be a president.
Maybe they don't let women be the president. That is also a good guess. Why do you think there's only one black person? Yes, Stella.
Because are you? I'm not sure what you mean. Are you
Like there's
there's only one.
there's only one. So
Yeah,
obviously it's allowed
But
because there's one. But why is there only one? Look, there's 53. Why do I keep saying that?
no.
Dyslexic. There are 44 white guys on here and one
Because
black man.
oh, just my face. It's like the same reason as women. They don't think like that black people aren't the same as white people and stuff.
Good job. Yes. They don't think black I know. They don't think black people can do the job as good as white people. They don't think women can do the job as good as men. What do you guys think? Do you agree with that?
No.
Do you think that's hogwash?
Wait, what's happening?
Ridiculous?
Yeah. No.
That's
Am I-
silly that they don't think women can do a good job.
So when I grow up, can I still
No.
be president though?
Well, let's talk about the rules for being president. Okay, so here are the rules. You have to be a natural born citizen, so born in the United States. Were you guys born in the United States?
I'm not.
Yes, you were.
Oh, okay.
You were both born in Las Vegas. You have to be 35 years old.
Oh, I'm fine.
So could you be president right now?
Maybe because she has one of them.
No. So you can be president as a kid. You have to be a grown-up. But will you be 35 one day?
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Yes. So you have to be 35 years old. You have to have been a resident of the United States for
What's a
14
resident?
years. So you have to have lived in the
14.
United States for at least 14 years.
Did I live there?
Yes, you've been here the whole time.
Oh
Well, you haven't been here
Like
14
14.
years because you're not 14 years old yet.
Yeah.
But you've lived here your whole life.
I've only been
And you
here
can only serve 2 terms. So when a president is elected, he gets 4 years, and then he can be
Yeah.
reelected once, and so he can serve another 4 years. But that's the total. He can only serve a total of 8 years. So those are the rules for who can be president. Does that include women?
Wait, what? So, like,
So
are you
natural born citizen, 35 years old, resident for 14 years, and only 2 terms. So can women
Yeah.
vote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Or can women run? Yes. And women have run for president. Who do you know who just ran for president?
Hillary.
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 So let's talk about how the president is elected. We vote for the president. You remember you went with me
Yeah, I remember.
when we voted and we went into the little booth and pushed the buttons.
Yeah.
Remember? Okay.
Which one was it then?
Well, we didn't vote for the guy who won. So let's talk about who can vote. You have to be 18 years old or over to vote.
Yes, I am definitely.
Yeah, I am definitely
And then
18.
let's talk about the rules of the old rules. So all these guys, up until recently,
All the
all
white
these
men.
white guys, let's see how they were elected. Who could vote for them and why did they only vote for white men? Let's look at the rules. So at first, our Constitution, do you know what our Constitution is?
What's the Constitution?
It's like the rules for the United States
Oh yeah.
that they wrote at the beginning of our country.
No, I don't.
Okay, so at first the Constitution said that it was up to the states. It was up to each state. They could come up with their own rules for who could vote. So like the state of Nevada.
Oh.
So most states, when our country was first formed, back in the 1700s, most states only allowed white male men, adult property owners. So that meant they had to own land and houses before they could vote. What do you have to have land and houses?
Money.
Money. So you had to have money to be able to vote. Does that sound fair to you?
Kinda not.
Okay. What part seems fair?
Not
Tell
lots
it again,
of-
please.
Do you think it's fair that you have to have money to be able to vote for who's going to be president?
Well,
No, not really.
Me neither. Do you?
I always thought there would be like a little bucket and like there was like pins and you could write on the paper who do you want to win.
That sounds fair. Should
Yeah.
you have to prove how much money you have before you can write it on the piece of paper and put it in the bucket?
no, it's
Nope.
not
No.
there.
Does having more money make you a better or smarter person?
No.
No.
Does someone who has more money, does that mean they're automatically a better person than someone who doesn't have money?
No.
No.
Because
Not at all.
That's silly. Okay.
yeah.
So that's how it was. It was adult white male property owners. Freed
Which
slave
property owner?
people who had land.
Oh yeah.
Freed slaves could vote in 4 of the states, only 4.
What does that mean?
That means black people
So
who
what?
were slaves but who were freed. But only in 4 of the states was that even allowed.
I don't get it still.
So it was black people who had been slaves and their owners freed them. They weren't slaves anymore.
All right.
They could vote
Oh, now I
in
get
4
it.
of the states out of
Yeah, I think so.
how many? Women could not vote at all
Why?
because they thought women were dumb, honestly.
No, I am not.
I know.
I am not dumb.
Actually, I shouldn't use the word dumb. That's kind of an ableist.
How about
What's able?
Ableist. Not smart. They thought women were not smart.
I am smart?
Are we smart?
Yes.
Yep.
And that's totally not fair of women not including that land.
That women couldn't vote?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then they also had, let's see, ways to keep immigrants, so people from other countries, people who weren't white, Native Americans. What are Native Americans?
They're like Indian.
Indians, the people who lived here first before white people,
Yeah. White people, and before the Pilgrims, I think.
before the Pilgrims.
Pilgrims.
Yep, the people who were on
Before
this land
us.
before us. Yeah,
Wait,
whose
like
land this was.
This land right now.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
this land.
So they had these laws that made it hard for these people to be able to vote. There was Jim Crow laws, which we'll talk about that. Literacy tests. So they would give you a test to see if you could read.
Oh, I can read.
I
I
know.
can't.
People who couldn't read
I'm
weren't allowed to
learning.
vote. Now that may sound kind of like a good idea because we say it's good to read, right?
Yeah,
But-
but it isn't.
It's good to read, but especially in the old days, not everyone went to school. It was mostly people who had a lot of money went to school. So there's the money thing again. So by saying you have to be able to read,
It's like you have to pay money to learn to read.
learn to read, and so then to get to vote, right? If you couldn't vote, if you couldn't read, and religious tests. So they would say you had to be a certain religion. That's ridiculous, right? Okay, so in 1870, non-white men and freed slaves could vote in some states. Southern states, so the South, like where Nana and Paul live in Arkansas, Southern states
Mama.
used the Jim Crow laws to keep black people from voting. So black people,
Mama.
some black people were allowed to vote, but they used laws to keep them from voting, like the thing where they had to learn how to read. Black people were slaves for a long time. They didn't go to school. So
How long?
400 years. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So they didn't go to school like white people. And so then if you say, well, if you can't read, you don't get to vote, they didn't get to vote.
What if
That's
if you
not
couldn't
fair.
read and they ask you if you could, and if you couldn't, they could show you to they could let you go to school so you could.
Right. They put the law there, though, because they didn't want them to read. So they didn't want to help them.
That's
They didn't want black people to be able to vote.
president.
mean.
I would have there would be a table in a little building, and this was where you could vote. There would be a little table, then a bucket, and some papers and pens, and you could write.
And you would help them write if they couldn't write. Okay, so then we had the Jim Crow laws, which were the segregated schools and the segregated places, like we talked about with Ruby Bridges. Like we talked about with Ruby Bridges, right, where they kept the white people and the black people separate. Literacy tests. They had poll taxes where you had to pay for your citizenship right. So you had to pay money to be able to vote. Again, with the money.
Yeah, loads of things is money.
Money, right? So the
Money,
people who had money could do stuff, and the people who didn't. And then residency requirements. So you had to live in a certain place for so long. In 1887, citizenship was given to Native Americans if they left their tribes. So Native Americans were here first, So Native Americans were here first. They were in their tribes, like the Paiute and the Sioux and the Cherokee. Those are all different tribes, kind of like big families.
Oh.
And they said, you can be a citizen of the United States and vote if you say you're not a part of your tribe anymore. Is that fair?
What if like the whole tribe goes then?
It's like saying you have to leave your family.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I get really hungry.
And they were in their tribes before white people came to this country, and then we took the land away. And then said you have to leave your tribe to be able to vote.
That's not
There's
fair.
like a person. It's
That's
like,
not fair. In 1920 is when they finally said women could vote. After they marched around with signs. Remember when we did that in Girl Scouts?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about the suffragists. Yeah. So after we took to the streets and marched around with signs and went on hunger strikes and all that stuff, they let women vote. In 1924, they made it so all the Native Americans could vote, so they could stay in their tribes.
oh, I'm just looking at this.
In 1943, they made it so Chinese immigrants were given citizenship so they could vote. So people who came here from China, they were not treated very well. And then, in 1964, tax payment was removed as a condition, so they didn't have to pay to be able to vote. And then in 1965 is when the Voting Rights Act was passed. That was the thing that Martin Luther King Jr. helped to pass. So
like,
when he marched in the streets and they sat at the counters and they stopped riding the buses and all that stuff, that was to get, one of the things that happened from that was the Voting Rights Act was passed so that everyone could vote. It didn't matter if you were a man or a woman, if you were black or white, what religion you were, how much money you had, all that stuff.
Mama,
Mm-hmm.
when can we end like the
Soon. Soon.
Which picture are you
But there is still something today where some people are not allowed to vote, and that is felons, people who have gone to prison. And sometimes even after they've been let out, they get sent to prison, 10 years, you have to be in prison for whatever crime you committed. You do your 10 years, you get out, and they still don't let you vote.
I think that's kind of fair.
You think that's kind of
not.
fair?
Because like
Kinda
they
fair, kinda
were
not.
in like prison,
Right.
And you have to be like bad to get in prison, and
Right.
and like I don't think that people that are like really bad should like be able to vote because they might vote for the bad.
Bad president.
It's
That
kinda
makes
fair
sense.
and kinda not.
Right, that sounds good because if you went to prison, that must mean you did something really bad and, you know, you don't get certain rights. However, I'm going to tell you a couple of things and then you tell me what you think. So, the United States has the highest number of people in prison than any other Western country. So, like any country in Europe, France, Germany, we have the most number of people in prison.
I think that's like kind of bad.
There was a 500% increase in incarceration, which means people in prison, from 1970 to 1990. So in 20 years. So 100% is like when you get 100% on your test.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
get them all right. 500%.
That's
So-
still
A big increase. A whole bunch of people were put in jail. Black people are put in jail or put in prison at 5 times the amount as white people.
what?
They put 5 times as many black people in prison as they do white people.
Wow.
Does that seem fair? Do you think
It's
black
like they-
people are just bad people, or do you think people throw more black people in jail? Do you think more black people are in prison than white people because black people are just naughty and bad?
No.
Or do you think maybe white people throw more black people in jail?
I think it's because white people throw more black people in jail because they're like black.
Yeah. And like I said, black people
And
were
they're not
slaves
even-
for 400 years. They, in the grand scheme of things, they haven't been free for very long.
Yeah, they didn't get any.
So, and for drug crimes, for doing drugs, so these aren't violent crimes. I'm not saying drugs are good. I'm not saying do drugs. But it's not killing someone, hurting someone, robbing someone, something like that, okay? So, 6 times more black people are put in jail than white people for doing drugs. And the amount of black people doing drugs and the amount of white people doing drugs is the same. But black people are put in prison 6 times more often than white people.
Oh, wow.
So white people do drugs too, but they're often, and it's against the law, but they are not arrested and they are not put in jail. Is it about this? Okay.
What is drugs?
Drugs. So something, you know how we drink alcohol?
Wait, that is... Oh,
That's kind of like drugs. But alcohol is legal. No, you don't think so? And drugs are not. And some drugs are illegal because they're very dangerous. And some drugs are illegal just because someone decided to make them illegal. Some drugs can really hurt you.
like on a scale of 1 to 10, how dangerous?
It depends on the drug. We can talk about that another
The
time.
dangerous
12% of the population is black, and they make up 35% of jail.
Whoa.
So 12 out of 100 people are black in the United States. 35 out of 100 people in jail are black people. Does that sound weird? Yeah. So it sounds to me like a lot more black people are arrested and thrown in jail than white people. Now, doing these drugs are against the law, but it seems like black people are arrested and thrown in jail for doing drugs and white people are not as often. And then these rules about drugs and how long you go to jail for them were started basically in the 70s and 80s, so not that long ago. I was born in the 70s. And that's when they decided, the war on drugs, that they were going to round up all these people and throw them in jail and not let them out for a very long time. And they mostly arrested the black people. And then once they were in jail,
1 second.
they were felons, and when they got out, they couldn't vote.
I have just one question.
Yes.
Did the black people do something bad to get in jail?
They did break the law, but the law was about drugs. It wasn't about them hurting anybody. And they arrested the black people and not the white people. The other thing, and this is real
So
quick.
They let the white people do drugs
Yes.
and not the black.
Even though it was both against the law. There's one of the drugs is called cocaine. Cocaine. And there's 2 different kinds. There's one that was in a powder, and that's the kind white people used more because it was more expensive and white people had more money. And then there was one that was a little rock. They were both cocaine. It's just one was in powder and one was in rock.
So
The cocaine powder cost more money, and more white people did that one because they had more money. The black people and people of color did more of the rock because it was cheaper. If you were caught with the rock, you were sent to jail like for 3 times as long than if you were caught with the powder.
like, how do you do the rock?
Well, it doesn't matter. But does that seem fair to you?
No.
Even though they were the same drug?
No.
So then black people caught with this rock, they still broke the law. I mean, there was a law and they broke it. But they got sent to jail for 3 times as long as these guys. And some of these guys didn't even go to jail, even though they were doing the same drug. So do you see how that's kind of unfair?
I just got one question. Yes.
What?
Even if the white people did the rock, did they still get in jail?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. What?
So it's harder for African Americans still to be able to vote. So, and then, like I said, women didn't get to vote until 1920. Does this make a little more sense now?
Yes.
Because who's voting for the president mostly in our history? Who gets to vote? In our history.
I think it is white men.
And white rich men, right? Men with money. What do you think, Nora? Did I break your brain?
Yeah,
We
I
covered a
think
lot.
you did.
Do you think
I
this is fair?
about what?
That it's all these men, white men?
No, not.
There's not much black men.
Do you think we should change this?
There's only one black man.
Do you think we need some more? Do you think we need some more girls on here?
Yeah, it's not fair.
How about
There's
we make
all
some
men,
Right.
no girl.
How? What?
Not
Stella?
even one.
Maybe like when it changes and there's more girls, we can write it on like the other.
We can write it on the back.
Girl.
I have one question, Mom.
That would be cool. So if a woman is voted in as president in your lifetime, it'll be the first female president. We haven't had one yet.
Me.
It's gonna be you.
Me.
Yeah, it's gonna be me first.
We've also had no gay presidents that we know of.
What's gay?
Boys like boys and girls like girls.
Oh.
That's another group of people that aren't elected president. Okay, that was a lot. That was a big one. Any last minute comments? Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes.
Are we ever going to talk about that president?
Donald Trump. What do you want to say about him?
That one? Or maybe that one? Or that one? Or that
Oh, you want to talk about specific ones?
I don't know.
Maybe you can do one with your dad. He just looked up a whole bunch of interesting facts about
That
Grover
one?
Cleveland.
Grover Cleveland. Look it up.
So,
Which one is that? Let me see. What's his
you know what?
name?
I like this guy. Where is he? I liked Carter.
Why?
He was cool. Which guy did you like, Jason? Anybody?
I don't know what I like. Someone.
We'll have to
Barack
learn about
Obama.
him,
You
and
like
you can
Obama?
see if you like any
Barack
of them.
Obama. I liked him too.
Thomas Smith.
You like Barack Obama? I miss him.
I don't know who I like.
Yeah, we'll have to learn something about
Learn
each
some
one.
about him. Yes,
But I
Stella.
picked
I
Barack
thought
Obama.
that George Washington was first president, and then it was Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, it seems because those are the two that we kind of celebrate on President's Day, but Abe Lincoln came way after George Washington. Those are just two of the very famous ones. We got to wrap this up because if it goes too long, it won't.
Bye.
So